Welcome back to the channel, basketball fans, where today we are taking a deep dive into the absolute most fascinating and unexpected storyline brewing in the Eastern Conference as we hurtle toward the 2026 NBA playoffs. Going into this season, the general consensus around the basketball world was that the Eastern Conference was going to take a massive step back in terms of overall depth and top-tier competition. Analysts and fans alike believed it would be a relatively weak conference compared to the absolute bloodbath happening out west. But the reality of the hardwood has completely shattered those preseason projections. The competition in the East has proven to be incredibly fierce, and a massive reason for this unexpected level of dominance is the meteoric and frankly terrifying rise of the Detroit Pistons. We need to stop and truly appreciate what is happening in the Motor City right now. The Detroit Pistons currently boast the very best record in the entire National Basketball Association, sitting atop the mountain with an astonishing 41 wins and only 13 losses. They are not just leading the Eastern Conference, they are dominating it, currently holding a massive 5.5-game lead over the rest of the pack. They have officially shed the rebuilding label and emerged as a legitimate, terrifying threat to make a run all the way to the NBA Finals. This incredible turnaround has been spearheaded by a completely transcendent MVP-caliber breakout season from their franchise cornerstone Cade Cunningham, who is controlling the game with a level of maturity and skill that is frankly unbelievable for his age. Combine that with the absolute physical dominance and all-star leap of their phenomenal young center Jalen Duren, and you have a recipe for regular season destruction. The Pistons are bullying teams, they are running them out of the gym, and they are playing with a swagger that Detroit has not seen since the days of the go-into-work era. But as incredible as this regular season has been for Detroit, every single season basketball observer knows that the playoffs are an entirely different sport. The game slows down, the whistles swallow up, and the pressure becomes completely suffocating. And when you look closely at this Detroit Pistons roster, there are some glaring flaws and massive questions about how viable they will actually be when the postseason begins. The biggest elephant in the room is their complete lack of playoff experience. This current core group of players has never even won a single playoff series together. They have not been through the tactical wars of a 7-game series where coaches make adjustments game by game and every single possession feels like life or death. While they are the undisputed kings of the regular season right now, the jury is still very much out on what will happen when the lights get overwhelmingly bright in late April and May. When you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference landscape, you see the traditional heavyweights starting to round into form. The New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers came into this season widely regarded as the two heavy favorites to come out of the East. And while both of those franchises have dealt with their fair share of injuries, locker room adjustments, and mid-season struggles, they have both steadied the ship. They are playing tough physical basketball and look absolutely destined to secure top 4 seeds and home court advantage in the first round. But then there is the wild card, the anomaly, the team that absolutely nobody wants to play. We are talking about those pesky, relentlessly overachieving Boston Celtics who are currently completely spoiling the Detroit Pistons party, while sitting alone in second place in the Eastern Conference with a remarkable record of 36 wins and 19 losses. What the Boston Celtics are doing this season is nothing short of miraculous. They have exceeded every single rational expectation placed upon them. And the most shocking part of this entire story is that they are doing it entirely without their franchise player. Jayson Tatum has not played a single game this season, and yet the Celtics have completely refused to fold. They are not just surviving, they are thriving. Even without their perennial MVP candidate, Boston boasts a top 10 offense in the league and a top 10 defense in the league. They currently hold the third best net rating in the entire National Basketball Association. Coming into training camp, absolutely nobody in their right mind thought the Boston Celtics would be contending for a title this season given their injury situation. And maybe they ultimately will fall short of a championship. The undeniable truth is that they are a very real, very dangerous threat that demands the utmost respect from every single team in the league, especially the number 1 seeded Detroit Pistons. And this brings us to a highly revealing conversation that recently took place on the incredibly popular Game Theory podcast. The host, Sam Vecenie, was joined by Bryce Simon, who is well known for hosting the Pistons Pulse podcast and is one of the most plugged-in minds regarding Detroit basketball. They were going through the exercise of power ranking the true contenders in the Eastern Conference. During this discussion, Bryce Simon admitted that in a general sense he would rank the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks slightly ahead of the Boston Celtics in a vacuum. But then he made a stunning admission that completely changes how we should view the playoff picture. Simon conceded that specifically from the perspective of the Detroit Pistons, the Boston Celtics are the team that scares him the absolute most. He fears a playoff matchup against Boston more than anyone else in the league. This is a massive statement coming from someone who watches every single second of Pistons basketball. Why would the #1 team in the league be terrified of a team missing its best player? Bryce Simon broke it down masterfully, and it all comes down to the tactical nightmare that Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics present for Detroit. Simon explained that he is terrified of the matchup because the Celtics are elite at taking away the exact things the Pistons need to do to win basketball games. Specifically, he pointed out 3 major areas of concern. The Celtics do not turn the basketball over, they completely dominate the offensive rebounding battle, and they shoot 3-pointers at an incredibly high volume and efficiency. These 3 specific statistical areas are the exact ingredients for a recipe that could cause absolute disaster for the Detroit Pistons in a 7-game series. Let us break down each of these tactical elements because this is where the genius of the Celtics system truly shines. First, we have to look at the turnover battle. The Detroit Pistons have built their entire defensive identity around forcing live ball turnovers and getting out into transition. They are a young, athletic, high-flying team that wants to create chaos, jump into the passing lanes, strip the ball handler, and run down your throat before your defense can get set. When the Pistons are forcing turnovers, they are virtually unbeatable because it allows Cade Cunningham to operate in the open floor where his vision is lethal. But the Boston Celtics are the absolute worst matchup for a team that relies on turnovers. The Celtics simply do not give the ball away. With veteran guards who process the game at an elite level, Boston protects the basketball like it is the most valuable commodity on earth. They do not throw lazy passes, they do not get sped up by defensive pressure, and they completely neutralize the transition game. If Detroit cannot force turnovers, they are forced to operate exclusively in the half-court against a set top 10 Boston defense, and that is exactly where young teams typically bog down and struggle to score. The second major area of concern is the battle for possession, specifically on the offensive glass. The Pistons have relied heavily on Jalen Duren and their athletic front court to bully teams inside, grab offensive rebounds, and create second-chance points. But the Boston Celtics, despite perhaps lacking a traditional massive superstar center, are incredibly disciplined when it comes to gang rebounding. They put bodies on people they box out fundamentally, and they limit their opponents to 1 single shot per possession. Furthermore, the Celtics are phenomenal at generating their own offensive rebounds through their spacing and unpredictable cutting. By winning the rebounding battle, the Celtics essentially steal possessions away from the Pistons. In a playoff game where the margin of error is razor thin, having 3 or 4 fewer possessions than your opponent is often the difference between winning and losing. But the most terrifying aspect of this matchup, the thing that truly keeps Detroit fans up at night, is the mathematics of Mazzulla-ball. The Boston Celtics shoot the 3-point shot at a volume that is mathematically overwhelming. They space the floor completely, creating massive driving lanes and putting unbearable pressure on the opposing defense to cover every single inch of the perimeter. Joe Mazzulla has instilled a philosophy that demands taking the right shots, and in his system, the right shot is very often a 3-pointer. The Detroit Pistons, on the other hand, have a very well-documented weakness when it comes to outside shooting. While they have improved, they are not an elite 3-point shooting team. They rely much more on attacking the paint, getting to the mid-range, and scoring at the rim. Bryce Simon pointed out this glaring mathematical disadvantage. If the Boston Celtics are making 15 or 23 pointers in a game and the Detroit Pistons are only making 8 or 10, it becomes almost mathematically impossible for Detroit to win the game regardless of how many 2-point shots they make. The Celtics essentially beat you with a calculator. They win the math battle by generating higher value shots on a consistent basis, and against a team like Detroit that struggles to keep up in a shootout from beyond the arc, this is a fatal flaw. Bryce Simon noted that if you look back at the regular season matchups between these two teams, every single game has been an absolute dogfight. The Celtics do not roll over. They are uniquely well-equipped structurally and tactically to give the Detroit Pistons absolute fits. They take away the transition game, they neutralize the rebounding advantage, and they outshoot them from the perimeter. It is a perfect storm of matchup nightmares. But beyond the X's and O's and the statistical anomalies, there is an entirely different level to this fear, and it revolves around the intangibles of playoff basketball. Even without Jayson Tatum on the floor, or perhaps with a severely compromised version of Tatum if he tries to return for the playoffs, the Celtics might not have the ultimate top-end talent edge over a fully healthy Pistons squad led by an MVP candidate. But what the Boston Celtics possess in spades is the ultimate equalizer, which is deep, profound playoff experience. This roster has been to the NBA Finals. They have been through grueling 7-game series against the toughest opponents in the world. They know what it feels like to play in front of hostile crowds in elimination games. They possess a championship DNA that simply cannot be replicated or faked. They know how to manage their emotions when a team goes on a 15-0 run. They know how to execute their half-court sets when the referee swallows the whistle in the fourth quarter. Contrast that immense wealth of experience with the Detroit Pistons. For all their regular season brilliance, this is a young, unproven squad. They have not earned their battle scars yet. They do not know how their bodies and minds will react to the suffocating pressure of a Game 5 tied at 2 games apiece. In the playoffs, experience allows veteran teams to exploit the anxiety and the mistakes of younger teams. The Celtics have thrived on winning the margins all season long. They win the loose balls, they take the charges, they make the smart extra pass, and they do not beat themselves. Bryce Simon understands this dynamic perfectly, and his logic makes absolute sense. Young team trying to prove they belong is incredibly vulnerable to a veteran team that executes flawlessly and never panics. If Joe Mazzulla can successfully carry his system into the playoffs with this specific group of players, there is absolutely no reason to think they cannot pull off a massive major upset in a positive matchup like this one. Imagine a scenario where the heavily favored #1 seed Detroit Pistons face off against the gritty playoff-tested Boston Celtics in the second round or the conference finals. The pressure on Detroit would be astronomical. The media narrative would immediately shift to whether the young Pistons are ready for the moment. Meanwhile, the Celtics would be playing with the ultimate house money. They would be loose confident and executing their math-based system with ruthless precision. If Boston comes out in Game 1 and hits 23-pointers while completely stifling the Pistons' transition game, the seed of doubt will immediately be planted in the minds of those young Detroit players. And once doubt creeps into a young locker room during the playoffs, it spreads like wildfire. This is exactly why smart basketball minds like Bryce Simon are looking past the overall standings and analyzing the actual structural matchups. You can win 41 games in the regular season by simply being more athletic and playing harder than teams on a random Tuesday night in January. But in May, you have to beat the team in front of you 4 times in 7 tries. You have to solve the puzzle they present while preventing them from solving yours. And the puzzle the Boston Celtics present is incredibly complex. It requires discipline, patience, and elite perimeter defense, all things that young teams historically struggle to maintain over a long series. The Celtics do not need to be the most talented team on the floor to win a series against Detroit. They just need to be the smartest and the most disciplined. They need to turn the series into a half-court grinding math test, and that is exactly the kind of test the Boston Celtics have been acing all season long. The playoffs are ultimately about finding the fatal flaw in your opponent and exploiting it repeatedly until they break. The Pistons' fatal flaw is their reliance on momentum and their vulnerability to the three-point line. The Celtics are a machine designed specifically to halt momentum and barrage you from the perimeter. It is a fascinating clash of styles. The unstoppable force of Detroit youth and athleticism meeting the immovable object of Boston veteran savvy and tactical execution. While the national media might focus on the star power of Cade Cunningham, the true basketball sickos are watching the margins. They are watching the turnover differential, the offensive rebounding percentages, and the shot profiles. And in all of those crucial hidden categories, the Boston Celtics hold a terrifying advantage. So as we gear up for what promises to be an unforgettable postseason, the entire basketball world needs to keep a very close eye on the Boston Celtics. Do not let their lack of a superstar alpha dog fool you. They are a perfectly constructed collective unit operating at the peak of their intellectual powers. They are the boogeyman hiding in the bracket, waiting for a young team like the Detroit Pistons to make a mistake. Bryce Simon has sounded the alarm for the Motor City, and if the Pistons cannot find a way to dictate the terms of engagement, solve the math problem, and protect the basketball, their dream season could turn into a playoff nightmare at the hands of Joe Mazzulla and his resilient squad. I want to know what you guys think about this incredibly intriguing potential playoff matchup. Do you agree with the assessment that the Boston Celtics are the ultimate trap series for the Detroit Pistons? Can the young athleticism of Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren overcome the veteran savvy and mathematical advantages of the Celtics? How much does playoff experience truly matter when you are facing a team that has been the best in the league all season long? Let me know all of your thoughts, your predictions, and your hot takes down in the comments section below, because this is exactly the kind of tactical debate that makes playoff basketball the greatest spectacle in sports. If you enjoyed this deep dive breakdown and want to see more content analyzing the hidden strategies of the NBA, please do me a massive favor and hit that subscribe button right now to join the community. We are breaking down the game on a deeper level every single week. Also, please smash that like button if you appreciate the detailed analysis, and absolutely do not forget to click the little bell icon to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.